Excellent. I wouldn't say it's hyperbole or calling this a watershed moment is not hyperbole. I think we are fundamentally entering in a new era. The reason why we're here today to kind of ask our esteemed panelists and absolutely gather the insights and perspectives from folks here attending both on site and remotely. Our world has changed. When the Cloud Security Alliance came out with its kind of Mythos ready document, several hundred CISOs across industry got together and they kind of said, this is a wake up call. We've got to prep our security companies, our security organizations, our security infrastructure to address this type of dynamic. And that's kind of what we're doing.
No, I wasn't going to touch on that.
Oh.
I just wanted to verify, is everybody here familiar with the report that Matt is talking about?
And if you're not, just go to the Cloud Security Alliance and look up Mythos Ready. But it's effectively a lot of these frontier models have done such a good job at finding vulnerabilities, issues, concerns, on how to exploit those that organizations are now really in a wake-up call. How do we make our organizations more resilient with this? One thing I've seen just in the work that I do, and then I'm going to posit a question to Marty overseeing his program, is our timescales are collapsing. We do not have the luxury of time to address vulnerabilities that can be exploited in our operating environments. And so the first question I'd love to hear from Marty is, what's the guidance you have for you and your team and your program as you're looking to kind of this new world that we're operating in?
Yeah, I mean, that is the question. To give everybody an example, we use Nucleus to manage our vulnerabilities. Our average new vulnerabilities in our systems in total last year was about 5,000 every month. This last month, we had 35,000. So 7 times the amount in the same environment. It's a hybrid environment. We run a private cloud and we're in several public clouds and we're a software, a SaaS vendor, but this is really apples to apples, 7 times the number of vulnerabilities.
You guys also introduce yourselves?
Do you, in a sec, do you attribute that to better detection or?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for those who don't know me, I'm the CISO here at Xiphon. I'm also our Chief Legal and Compliance Officer. We're the company that hosts this, and we're really proud to be able to do so. We're a healthcare IT vendor. We have about 1,000 employees in the U.S. We have about 2,000 contractors offshore, and we provide billing software and services to U.S.-based healthcare companies. So a very rigorous, highly regulated environment with a data that malicious people want, right? So that's the problem. And so if you saw last week, the CISA, the federal government's IT security regulator for their internal operations, said that they want to see critical patching within 3 days now for federal agencies. And apparently federal agencies were not using a risk-based approach necessarily to look at vulnerabilities, and we have for many years. So I think that the challenge now is, how do you deal with 35,000 vulnerabilities, and it goes up every month significantly. And I do think that there's going to be a bolus for the next year as more and more people are using these tools on the prevention side to identify vulnerabilities faster. But as soon as they're identified, it doesn't take, if you've seen, I just read a unskilled person with $2,000 of tokens was able to string together an attack successfully. So the risks to all of us have really increased. And I think you can't really patch your way out of this. You have to address the criticals and highs. But when you look at what really is going on, it's the risk that Mythos or the other tools can daisy chain together a bunch of low and mediums and turn out to have a new attack that nobody has identified. So it means we have to go back to the fundamentals and deal with all the other things. I personally am obsessed with data loss prevention, because for us, that's the final way to protect things, right? Even if somebody can get in, if they can't get anything out, that's our biggest protection. But I think you have to really look specifically at your systems and ask, are your identity management, your network segmentation, your behavioral tools that identify errant behaviors all have to have an increase in how you're handling it?
Chad, maybe a little bit about your background. And I know you've done a lot of work both on the offensive and defensive side around vulnerability management, thinking through what are you seeing? What's new? How has our world fundamentally changed?
I'm Chad Collier, and for about 20 years, been a CISO, CIO, run large-scale federal security operations under RMF. Right now, I'm involved in AI security consulting, AI development, and to come back and what I'm seeing right now, especially in AI software development, is the automation of built-in automation of test harnesses and security checking every single round, every single commit to your repo now. So it's not something you do at the end when you're going into production, you're not doing it in your QA system. You're doing it as part of a process flow continuously. Also, your code is checked automatically. You don't have a person to the side going and doing static analysis of your code or a dynamic analysis. That's all built in, cooked into the cake now. So that's an exciting thing. But once again, I mean, the elephant in the room is really the mean time to attack. And the Mythos report, I think they mentioned 2.3 years was the mean time to attack, and now it's down to 20 days. I've even seen 24 hours in some cases. So really, I think the rise of we've all heard the term SecOps, but vulnerability ops really as going back to the main focus and task of a security operations team, where we all know a SOC is supposed to be operating 24 hours a day. I have managed SOCs for years and never heard from them for 6 months at a time. And now, my client specifically, because we handle a huge amount of insurance data, and going to your point around DLP as another line of protection of that data. So if they get in, they can't get it out. But for me, it's really about owning in zero trust on all of your estate. So I'm assuming now that we're breached, but where can they go if they breach a system? If you're implementing zero trust correctly, they can't get far. They can't move laterally. They can't escalate privileges. And then they're continuously, your tokens are continuously evaluated. So even if they are they break through MFA, they're going to get hit with an evaluation within an hour. So a lot of these attacks that are against auth tokens, they're only as good as that period. They're going to have a reevaluation. So I see, to go back to your point, this whole approach has to become more of a 24/7 mentality in a true sense. On RMF projects, in my government projects, the government told us to set up a SOC. So we did it. Did we really operate a SOC? Did we staff it correctly? No. But now in today's environment, it's almost like you have to have hourly reporting about what's going on in your systems. You have to monitoring in real time about what is going on in your systems. You have to whitelist processes. So if somebody's in there and they pop a shell, that shell should not be there. So it gets shut down, and only something that's whitelisted can operate at that point. So I can go on forever, but let me pass this back.
And Alex, I'd love to hear from a security architecture perspective, like how some of these vulnerabilities are being discovered. And I think, Marty, you brought up a term that is near and dear to my heart, the notion of daisy chaining vulnerabilities, kind of combining things. What are some of the interesting insights you've garnered over the last couple of years, kind of being deep into this?
Yeah, so to reintroduce myself, I am the CISO at flaw. We're an AI software company. I also am effectively the senior security architect. And it's terrifying how much this has changed in the last year. And a lot of people are talking about how Mythos is going to be that line that's drawn in the sand that's going to take all these script kiddies and allow them to start making the attacks. But like Chad said, 24 hours. The last report I saw, it's 2 hours from getting an attack to being able, or getting a vulnerability and be able to attack it and take advantage of it. And these tools allow you to do this with rapid speed. I've been testing a lot of them. You have to stay up on that wave or you get left behind. And every time I've used these tools to test software, they've always found a way to get in. And it's terrifying. I mean, it's fortunate that you layer protections, you put the data loss prevention in place to make sure that you have brackets around control when people do get in. But if you don't start to change the way that you approach patching things, managing systems, understanding systems, building software, if you don't change that, you're already behind. Ironically, I think the biggest defense that most people have is that when you have a tree of fruit in front of you and all the fruit is ripe, how much can you pick at once? I mean, there's so much that you can attack and there's so much that you can go after as attackers. Your company not having much of benefit as a defense right now because it's becoming trivial. And unless you actually start layering in these defenses now, when these tools start to become more commonplace and these models get that much stronger, doesn't matter if it's Mythos. Elon Musk said that XAI is going to have their Mythos within 12 months. One of the DeepSeek guys said they're almost there already. We're already there. So you can't keep putting this off and thinking, oh, well, like we'll budget for next year. We'll try to get the resources. We'll make change then. It's so important to try to make sure that your business has continuity. And it's really hard to see how much value that has until it's taken away. And I think that's going to happen to a lot of companies soon. And it's, I'm glad to be at a place to where we are an AI company, we're an agile company, we're a pretty small company, we're a startup. We can change our process quickly to adapt to this new world. But those who try to do the old school process of, oh, well, the vulnerabilities come in, let's analyze them one by one. Those days are over. You really need to start to adjust the way you do this. You need to automate into the process. Everything in your SDLC has to automatically go towards patching immediately. You have to be able to deploy automatically. And that's something that vast majority of companies can't do or they're terrified to do. But then you have to ask yourself, which part of the CIA triangle is more important, confidentiality or availability? And that's where some companies are going to have to say, we're willing to potentially put up with a little bit of downtime now and then just so we can patch faster. It's a new world. And if you keep looking at it using the old rules, then you'll quickly get burnt.
Perfect
I
time
want to
for a
pause on
question.
another.
Hey, Matt, perfect time for a polling question. Okay? Kick it. So I put it up so people keep going because it's just really for the people online.
Excellent. I'm going to posit a question to Marty and then Dave, I'd love to get your perspective on a variant to this. But Marty, with this new dynamic, what are you telling your executive leadership team, your board, especially where you're kind of wearing two very unique hats, compliance counsel and CISO? Our world has changed. You're in a highly regulated industry, just like most of us here. What's your guidance to the board and to the executive leadership team?
Yeah, a great question. From the top down, the driver of security activities is actually negligence law. Just simply, are you acting reasonably? There's regulatory fines and there's more exposure, but when you look at the lawsuits that really do the financial damage, it's from tort lawyers, which is generally how our society shapes its behaviors. So the standards that we have to live by are set by the industry. We have to act reasonably under the circumstances, whether that's driving, whether it's cybersecurity. So when you talk with a board of directors or executives, you're talking first about what is reasonable security. And to Alex's point, reasonable security looks a lot different today than it did a year ago. But that reasonable security, you can't say, well, I drove my car as safely as I could, given that I have no brakes, right? You can't do that. So there's only so much defense that small companies or nonprofits or governments can have to say, well, we can't afford the level of security that's needed now. And I think that that's where the shakeout is going to come, because it's no longer heroism. To Alex's point, if you don't have the right tools and environment and automation, you are not going to keep up. And then you won't have defenses when something happens. And so when we have corporate discussions, board level discussions, this is what the discussion is about, is not particular vulnerabilities. It's at this high level, what is the change now in security required by AI? And it's really on both sides. What AI tools are there that help you to do what Alex is describing? And what are the threats? Because there's an asynchronicity. It's faster for the bad guys to take AI and attack us than it is for us to structure things to defend. And that delay is what creates risk. And then corporate boards go through the normal risk analysis. What risk can you avoid? What risk can you offload through insurance or contract provisions, which you can't avoid and you can't offload? How do you mitigate? And so it's that top-down view that then gets you to, okay, you can only do so much with insurance. You can only do so much with contracts. You can't avoid a lot of this. So now, from a board level, from a senior executive level, what efforts are we doing to mitigate and how are we prioritizing that? Because that's how you get to a reasonable level of security.
Exactly. Dave, I know you have done some tremendous work, so we'll get your quick intro and everything. But you've done some tremendous work in terms of skills, competencies, things of that nature. What's your guidance for practitioners, individuals coming into this profession to be able to kind of address this new normal?
Yeah, sure. Actually right now, I wear a couple hats at work. One is on the education side. So to your point, Matt, I do want to touch on that. But on the under the other hat, it's serving as a vCISO. So providing consulting services to clients of the company that I work at. And just in listening to you guys, I completely agree with everything you're saying, but you guys are in a more highly regulated environment than a lot of the clients that I'll support. Think of organizations that are maybe more in manufacturing, stuff like that, that haven't been held as accountable. So realistically, their security programs are less mature and further behind. So they're further behind in having and understanding this and being in a position to be able to react proactively. So a lot of times preaching the same thing you guys are saying, but at the same time, just really hitting them hard to work on their incident response plans and to understand that while these risks are out there and they're happening and the vulnerabilities that exist from them, let's take some time equally or close to equally on what are we going to do if something does happen. Um, and now from the education side, we're talking about things that I was looking it up earlier. And if it's at a formal academic level, taking an idea, whether it's a course or adding a class through formal education, it's about 12 to 18 months. But from ideation of what the class should be, putting the content together, running it through whatever bureaucratic elements are at the facility, it's 12 to 18 months. And even as we sit here on behalf of ISACA, if it's within a certification, it's about 12 months to be able to take what that is and put it in a certification and an exam, which are numbers that just I don't know what's going to happen with those, but they're just really not sustainable if you think about what we're talking about here. So what we do at the academy where I'm at is we do have the courses and we'll teach foundational awareness of what this all means. And then we put together different projects and initiatives about every 2 weeks to try and share with students what's going on and really where they can go to learn other information that's out there. Just very much like the CSA report. It's we're better, or we can provide a better service to the learners that we're trying to help to say, go read this. Go read this, be aware that it exists, hit us up with questions, and then we'll do kind of coffee talks or office hours to talk those through and try and give them the best context.
A new definition of skills. Bad joke. Bad joke.
No, it's very, very. It may be bad, but it's very accurate.
I want to queue up Alex and then Chad. Alex, I think one of the interesting things when you describe kind of the rigor that's going into developing code and the exploitability of code, Walk through what real-time remediation, what you're doing to make sure the organization is as resilient as possible, and some of the interesting lessons learned. And then, Chad, I'd love after Alex's insights is to hear kind of some of the things that you're seeing in the field, especially when we've had some very big heavy hitters in our profession giving us a wake-up call. So, Alex.
Sure. So I've learned to pray to every god there is and hope that we
Sacrifice
can
the
make
goat.
it. Yeah, sacrifice the goat. It almost feels like you have to do that because the old way the SDLC worked was you had this really strict but kind of long process of where, you ideate on something and then you would architect it, and then the security engineer would look at it, and then you would build it, and then somebody would make sure that it works, and the security engineer would come in again and say, hey, that actually is what you said you would do, because people never do what they say they will. And then you deploy it, and then you test it again, make sure it's secure. And a lot of companies in the software world did this manually. They didn't have automated pipelines for deploying their software, or like semi-automated. And as a result, if you have a vulnerability, you're talking about 3 to 6 weeks, if not longer, to be able to fix that vulnerability as it is in production. And when attack chains can conform and be exploitable within less than 24 hours, 3 to 6 weeks no longer works. So that means, how do you condense what was once up to months of time down to less than a day? And the truth is, as you guys have alluded to, is AI. And it kind of stinks that we have to also try to go as fast as the attackers, but we ultimately don't have a choice. If we don't go as fast as they do, then they'll win in this race. They'll get there before we do. And yeah, I mean, the attackers have always had it easier than the defenders. And right now, that the velocity at which they have it better is that much faster. So we have no choice but to also go faster. So as everybody in the panel has mentioned, automation and AI is really, truly the only way to go. You have to increase your tool set to be able to, analyze things for security before they even get to the point of building. And once they're built, as you're building it, making sure you're building security into it natively as you're building. What was, the judgment call of developers now should be something where a system is working with the developer, or the developer is working with the system to build out something, and it had security natively built into it. That's step one. Step two is you have to be able to go through this entire pipeline in less than 24 hours. So that means you have to take a step back and look at a process that we've been using for decades and change the way that it works. So you have to build automation end to end into it. You have to make sure that you can deploy something within 24 hours. And the one step or chink in the armor is going to be not being able to be automated in that process somewhere. Because if you have, in step 6 of 30, a lack of automation, if somebody has to go in and press a button and you have a 0 day that hits at 2 a.m, if you don't have automation looking for these things, patching, deploying, we're going to be to a point where that is industry expectation. It's pretty much there already if you want to be that secure in a regulated environment. But if everywhere else, it should be the standard within less than 24 months would be my guess, or else you're just simply never going to be secure. And it's going to be a tough few years for companies if they don't catch up to this train.
Should I continue? What I'm seeing in the industry right now is a drive towards extreme implementation of security measures that already exist. But I would say companies don't always take them that seriously. Like, say, for example, zero trust. And from a PII perspective, a project I'm working on for an insurance company is complete anonymization of all their data. So I'm building an ingest system to take in billions of insurance documents. Part of it goes into bronze, silver, gold medallion pattern for machine learning, and part of it goes to support an insurance claim or insurance application, what have you. But the ingest engine will basically strip out any identifiers at all of who these documents belong to, slap a GUID on it, and then they get stored. So if there is a breach, nobody has any idea who this data is. So I don't know legally if that would still count as a PII disclosure, but I'm paid to do what I'm doing. So, I'm enjoying the paycheck. So I'm not getting involved with the legal issues, but it's certainly an extreme measure. because it works. You go into our database, you go into our document management system, you have no idea who any of these documents belong to unless you have that key GUID that gets keyed back to another system. The other piece is just an extreme implementation of zero trust, almost to the point where it's you build a server purpose-driven for only one thing, to host an application. Almost like, and I think people are getting away from using virtual machines now, and they're just going to a SaaS product where there's the attack structure of a SaaS like web app in Azure, something like that. If you're familiar with that, there's much less to exploit in that model because we all know operating system is filled with holes, gaps, things you can do, processes you can run. You can't really run a process on a web app in Azure the same way you can run it in the operating system of virtual machines. So minimizing that attack surface. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the whitelisting everything on your equipment to where if you are breached and a process is running that is not implicitly given permission to, it's just not going to work. So it's just really locking everything down to such a degree, because to the point, I mean, you can't remediate quickly enough. You can't. I mean, the 0 days that you have no visibility into, you don't even know to remediate any of these things, and especially the attack chains when you're putting together, the OWASP chain, when you're taking 3, 4, 5 moderately critical exploits, chaining together into something that you're not prepared for at all. How are you going to remediate that? So for me, what I see a lot in a lot of the innovative defense is really taking what we all have. The monitoring systems become real time. The alerting systems, we all hate to get another alert, but staffing that those operations for people to pay attention to these in real time. And then I think another thing you see, and they mentioned this in the Mythos report, is what is a company's risk to just shutting it all down if you find something? I mean, that's got to certainly be part of the operations. Now, I've in the last 3 months, I've had to do that where we got breached and the decision was we had no visibility into what was going on. So we just shut it all down, rebuilt everything off of golden images and just started it all back up, knowing we'd probably get breached again. We didn't, but so it's really, I think it really comes down to summarize that companies are going to have to pay a lot more. We are able to get by on thinner and thinner security budgets because of automation and reliance on these monitoring tools that do everything for you automatically. But the reality is it's going to have to come back to more money needs to be spent in human capital, AI defense, and monitoring tools.
So Marty, obviously as a CISO, you have unlimited resources, a budget that really is infinite. What is your guidance for those companies that don't have that type of luxury, especially if you're running a smaller security team? And I'll pass this out, that you're running a smaller security team in a highly regulated industry. What would you tell fellow CISOs? Where should they prioritize? What are kind of those critical things to start reducing that risk profile?
Hard to believe, but we're also in that boat. I know that it seems like we have unlimited resources because of the lovely lunches we have here, but that is the challenge for everybody. There's no company that says we have more security resources than things to do. And I think that security has always been a model for me of how to prioritize, because any properly run security department has that imperative to prioritize in a way that maybe other business departments can avoid. And here, I think the here and now for security just means that we have to prioritize more, and you have to look more broadly at the issues. You're not prioritizing individual vulnerabilities. You have to look at the ways that will have the most protection, which is why I focus, for example, on DLP, because we have a very rigorous DLP overlay. There's more bang for that buck than some of the others. Automation, critical. For a small company, a startup now, honestly, I think that you probably start with what Chad's talking about, and from the beginning, de-identify data and work with either de-identified or obfuscated data. So you're keeping your attack surface smaller to begin with. Because if you don't start from the proper development approaches that Alex is talking about and the proper database and operational perspectives that Chad's talking about, I don't think you can afford to have a proper security environment. And there are companies that get nailed as a result. There's too many regulators, there's too many courts involved, too many upset customers and employees. So you can't hide. And if you can't hide, then the only way to deal with this is to make your prioritization really clear and involving all your stakeholders. It's not just prioritizing through our security experts here. You have to have the business involved so that you're really using your enterprise risk management to identify the risks from a corporate level and allocating resources accordingly.
Excellent insights. Dave, I'd love to hear a little bit from your perspective. How should organizations and individuals, especially people that are coming into this profession, how should they keep pace? What is your guidance? I know every one of us in this room, in the audience at large, has at one moment or time in the last couple of months felt completely overwhelmed by just the pace of change. What is your guidance for folks coming into this to look to be able to keep pace with this ever-changing environment?
Yeah, I think one of the things, and it actually, ironically, when we started the initiative for the mentorship program, we weren't talking about this. We were just talking more broadly, looking at things at a higher level. And so I definitely try and encourage people that are to understand or identify who can potentially be a mentor for them. And that definitely the topics that we talk about here at the monthly meetings evolve and stay more current than, like I was saying, through academia or even through certification type of programs. I recommend that and try to. It's actually something I learned from you, Matt, where as you're developing your skills and as you're trying to level up and learn more as the individual that you are, try and be specific and strategic on what you're try and be specific on what you're trying to learn. And the more specific you can be, there's actually the Sherlock Holmes line of, if you don't know what it is, get a better idea of what it's not. So you can just kind of narrow things down. But the more specific you can be on that, it gives you the opportunity to be more strategic in how you go about learning it. And it kind of boils down to that. And then you can apply what the specific topic is from there.
I think don't leave learning to chance effectively. You have to be very prescriptive and proactive about what are those skill sets, capabilities, knowledge, environments, et cetera, that you want to be able to have accurate, at least a relatively good understanding of.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything we're talking about here is vulnerability management and how the landscape, due to technology and the rapid rate of technology, is evolving. Whenever we're talking to somebody who's maybe fresh out of school or trying to transition career wise, this isn't the best job market out there now. So you're kind of swimming uphill or upstream in that as well, which is what I try and encourage people to understand where they want to go with their career just at this point in time, because the more you can be familiar with what you are trying to learn and study will give you a unique differentiators in yourself as against others, and at the same time be able to just kind of focus there. And that ties back to a lot of times in this industry when you're looking for work, networking is always going to be a huge thing. So that ties into hop on LinkedIn and ask who you who you see out there that you may want to ask if they will talk to you, be a mentor in some capacity, and that will get you a little bit better connected as well. So just from a development side, yeah, it's kind of multi-tenanted.
Absolutely. I know we've got a limited amount of time. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of the panelists coming down the line just a high level how AI can be used from a kind of blue team protecting, defending our organization. So, if you want, Chad, maybe just, very quickly, a couple of easy to implement, relatively not a whole lot of friction ways that AI can be used to kind of help protect our organizations.
Well, I can tell you what I do. The teams I run. I recently got put in charge of software development operations, cloud operations, and data for a company. The job I always wanted, I got it. Now it's taking my life over. So one thing I force my teams into Claude. Don't do anything that is not Claude code centric. We hook Claude up to our cloud estate, up to M365, where it has access to everything. That sounds crazy because you don't want somebody with the wrong privileges to be able to, you give the wrong privileges to Claude. I don't give it right privileges, but I want it to understand everything in my entire estate. Even on-premise equipment, I've got hooked up monitors where Claude can go to that on-premise equipment and analyze it, monitor it, manage it in a sense, or at least direct the team how to manage it. So when you get, and this all goes to speed to remediation. So if we have a vulnerability that we've discovered, the quickest way to get that done is not have a bunch of humans anymore sitting around discuss it, in email chains, in Teams forever. It's to get the SWAT team to engage Claude, have Claude look at that vulnerability, analyze which part of your estate it affects, because that's the quickest way you're going to get to how you're going to remediate this. Even to the point where we've got a skill in Claude that'll tell us to shut it all down. Because that's the protocol at the placemat. So it's how quick can you get that SWAT team together. The building is on fire and you don't want to be sitting around, putting gas in your fire truck. You need to be there. You need to be taking care of it as quickly as possible. So that is one sort of tactical approach that I find very, very effective. And obviously, just making sure you see it in time. And it's the monitoring tools and, understanding the behavior, the desired behavior on your equipment. If having AI monitor that, and if there's a violation of that behavior in that server, you're going to get told immediately about it. There's something going on. Like we develop a product that is for each client. You get one VM and you get one database assigned to that client, and everything's whitelisted. And there should be every behavior is predictable on that server. You don't even have, we access this using what's called Island Browser, which is a reverse proxy. You can't do anything on that server if you're not contacted through Island Browser first. So there's no way you're going to get into report. You're not going to pop a shell on this because it's just simply not allowed. So that's the approach I've been taking the last 8 months. But praying to the gods.
Yeah.
Well, the luck that you have is that your company's embraced AI and you're putting a lot of effort into bringing that into your chain. And a lot of companies are still on the fence about AI. And the truth is that you're already behind if you are. And you have no choice but to learn about these things and understand them as fast as possible. Because this new set of tooling, it needs to be in everywhere. If you keep doing the process the way you have been, then it is going to bite you. And it probably already is. You don't know it yet. The biggest challenge is that you're asking people and you kind of talk about what do people need to learn, and people need to unlearn so much. Those with the most experience in some ways actually are disadvantaged to those with less because they've learned how to do something for years and years. This is how we do it. And that's not how it's done anymore. Very simply stated, if you don't have this automation in place, you don't have AI, you don't go in and harden your systems, then you are a target. You're always a target anyways, but you're a target that will get hit. And the most terrifying thing about all this is that the attacks are just going to start to be completely automated with AI. The same way that we're talking about automating the defenses. I mean, attacks have been automated for a long time, but they've been automated at a surface level. But now they're going to dig. The attacks are just going to go in. They're going to find one thing at the top. They're going to chain it and chain and chain. They're going to get their way in. And then you're going to lose data. You're going to lose those crown jewels. So unless you start to understand what data you have, you start to understand your surface area, you start to actually look at a new way of approaching the way you have systems. You know, I, Chad, we both work at smaller, newer companies that are, flexible and agile in the way that we approach process and approach systems. So we can go in and, oh, you don't like this infrastructure? Let's just build a new one. AI will help us. We'll look at our requirements. We'll rebuild it from the bottom up. A lot of companies don't have that. They have really large hybrid infrastructure or on-site, on-prem infrastructure. They're going to have to take a hard look at what they have and how they can bring it to this new world as fast as they possibly can. Because if not, then that new world will come to them faster than they'd like.
Guys, I'm going to drop a polling question, but keep going.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, it's interesting to hear your guys' perspectives because, and while I agree with you, 110%, you have that one organization that you're kind of looking at it through. I tend to, uh, what I end up finding myself, whether it's through the academic um, or as a VC, so of organizations that have a less mature current state is and I'll usually work with IT directors and stuff like that is you have to understand the business. You have to understand the business model, what is most critical to the business, and then you can look at how that those elements of how it's structured, its resiliency, things like that. And I tend to look at AI or really most things product agnostic. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of products that say what they can do, but if you can understand what the business needs to do and where it needs to add that resiliency, um, uh, you need to know how you can harden that. And then from there, you can start to understand what are the best tools for it. And that leads into, as you do that, you can add automation and mature it out from there. But
Hey, Marty, how are you guiding your team to use AI from a defensive perspective?
So all of the tools that we use now have AI in them. So that's really the first level, right? Is what tools are you buying and what AI do they have? Because you have to do your own diligence and make sure you're comfortable with that. But really, for our entire stack now involves AI. And I think all to the same goal, which is automating as much as possible and correlating things. Because a lot of what we do in security is just broader and broader correlations, whether it's behavioral, whether it's functional. And so using AI as that system connection, particularly agentic AI processes, can really leverage your team significantly. And that's what we're focused on.
I know we're at time. I think there may be some questions from the audience. Just a final note, and then we'll hit you up and then the questions. Yeah, one thing that I think is fascinating is this notion of headless security. The terminology is wrong, but where everything is API driven and effectively you don't have a human in the loop. You've got agents making decisions. It's kind of like the analogy of automatic pilot for a plane. And I think we're going to see more and more of that, that the portal or the interface where a human goes into effectively becomes a time liability for a lot of our security programs. So I'm going to defer to whoever for the questions. So,
Okay, I have a question, but before, I'd just like to say I think the internet's going to go offline by the end of the year because of all the hacks going on. Um, so the question I have is, so how do you, um, like, what do you think there's a point where something is too secure? What is that point? How do you deal with it? Because, like, I've been at a company where it's like the security just seems kind of extensive for the thing I was doing.
I can take that one. I mean, security is a spectrum. It's all about risk. So every business has its own risk tolerance. And the less of a risk tolerance you have, the more secure you need systems to be. So as a user, sometimes it feels like, oh man, I can't right click in Windows. Like, what's this? Like, I want to be able to copy and paste this data and send it to myself at home. Well, there's a reason why you can't do that. And so you can't copy that data and send it to yourself at home. Um, it's not always going to be perfect. As security professionals, we do our best to try and make it to where the risk matches the risk tolerance of an organization. But it's a constant battle of trying to make sure there's balance there because ultimately all these organizations we're not security companies. We're trying to deliver software to customers. And so that is our goal, but we need to do it securely. So we try to have a balance in between the two. And some places have less risk tolerance than others.
Hi,
Good, you're good.
thank you. So my question was, you just stated that we are moving towards a more agentic architecture where human would be like not involved in the loop. I was recently a part of a research where I was responsible for creating a multi-agent architecture and also figuring out how one can poison these architectures. So I did it through like network packets to different prompts, and I was able to make my entire SIEM and SOC system sort of go haywire in terms of correlation. Is that something you guys are prepared for? Is that something you guys are looking towards?
what the research you're doing and the work there, I think, is absolutely fascinating because it is true. You can get in a multi-agent environment, one rogue agent to effectively give instructions, bad skills, however you want to parameterize it, that effectively kind of one bad apple ruins the barrel.
Yeah, it's
And we're
the same
seeing
effect.
this, and these are not just kind of we think it could happen. So rogue agents, skill poisoning, instruction poisoning, a number of these things are very real and they are happening. And so then the issue is, do we even have the telemetry and the capability to detect, if the skill set has been poisoned?
Hi, my name is Ashish Das. I'm in exposure management, which is the new name for vulnerability management. So one of the numbers that you guys didn't talk about, you talked about thousands of vulnerabilities, but in reality, 1 to 6% of those vulnerabilities that are identified are really need to be actionable, is what the threat actor is taking advantage of, even via chaining them together. And one of the things I'm seeing in the field is like autonomous pen testing tools like Horizon 3 and Pantera are being used like on a weekly basis, like particularly after Patch Tuesday, to surface those up, and then you can have your team remediate those via patching or system changes. So I just wanted your thoughts on that, if that's the same kind of thing you're seeing or recommending. And then also you talked about DLP as being one of the tools to address this, and what are some other tools as part of your defense and depth approach besides DLP are you seeing people implement?
Oh, let me finish his question first, or answer his question, and then we can hand that over to you. Once again, I'm sort of old school. I mean, I don't want to make a flippant statement. I mean, you can find every vulnerability under the sun. You can find 40,000 vulnerabilities. Okay, but on a server. But if you can't get to that server, you can't exploit them. First of all, if you don't have any privileged accounts on those servers, what are you going to run? Nothing. If you have processes whitelisted, what script are you going to run? You can't run a script. If you have HIM in place, just-in-time access in place, the only way anybody's going to get on that server with a privileged account is for a very short period of time. So you don't have the ability to escalate. And to your point, I mean, in cloud architectures, it is relatively cheap to build single-use, purpose-driven use systems. And once again, I mean, a technique I use, I mentioned this earlier, is each customer has basically their own system that's gaps. You can't move anywhere. If you were to breach it, you can't move horizontally. You can't get to the database because the way you route traffic. You basically just go back to old school tactics and just make sure they're in place and you enforce them through policy. So once again, you can find as many exploits as you want on my server, but how are you gonna take advantage of it? Because you've locked it down so completely that there's nothing they can do on that server. Now, yeah. Yeah. And in policy, we'll surface that up. I think one mistake I see organizations make, especially in the cloud, is they just do not leverage the power of policy, which you can't have a hacker get in your system and change your configuration because policy will not let you do it. So you'd have to take over. You'd have to be a global admin to really do damage. So.
Yeah. And just real quick on that, I think a lot of what Chad describes are things that would be recommended foundationally, and that they all roll up or can roll up to being under the umbrella of how are you applying zero trust into your environment as best as possible. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Eric Hicks. I actually have about 4 questions, but I'll only ask one given that the sand is running out of the hourglass. Not to call anybody out, but Alex, you were talking about patching and deploying earlier and the need for the speed of that, which I totally agree with. But the thing that kept popping into my mind is, what about testing those patches before you deploy them? Or is that in a goat sacrificing scenario? Patches can go bad and they can be deployed. And if you just deploy them and then all of a sudden, right. So I was wondering what you all thought about, like what about the testing piece, or is it like we're not going to do that?
Well, just because you're doing things faster doesn't mean you're skipping steps. You're just doing everything faster. So
including the testing,
QA,
Okay.
validating, all that is also automated. And the thing is when you're building, you can build automated test suites as you're building. Before, commonly test suites were done by separate teams and who was building. But now it's just that part of the building is building the test suites to go along with it. Part of the patching is building the test suites to go along with it. All automated process. So is it perfect? And this is where you have to ask yourself, am I willing to take a little bit of downtime now and then because the testing, sure, AI thought it had it right and it got it wrong. But would I rather have that, or would I rather have a vulnerability that gets attacked and actually breached? So zero risk tolerance.
Of course.
Not to call anybody out, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, if you take Eric's question and look at it from another angle.
Thank you for the excellent discussion. I'm a recent. Okay, sorry about that.
No, just real quick. What about testing after applying the patches to see if it opened up other doors?
You test before, you test after. You have testing at every. Yeah, you do everything before, just automatically. Nothing changes. You just have to do it faster.
Sorry, bud. You're up.
Okay. Thank you for the excellent discussion. I'm a recent master graduate in cybersecurity engineering. I'm at least seeking for my first cybersecurity position. If you were hiring today for an entry-level SOC analyst or security engineer role, what will you make one candidate stand out from hundreds of other applicants, especially in AI-driven cybersecurity environment?
You're hiring.
Yeah. So, do you know AI? I'd say that one benefit, and it's a tough market out there. I'm not going to say that it isn't. There's lots of layoffs. I think security hasn't been hit quite as hard as others, but the funny thing is that in tech, when there's layoffs in one area, those people start to go into the other areas. So it's making it to where everybody's shifting towards security, even though we're not getting hit as hard. Um, where I said experience is a really great thing to have. You have a great foundation across the board. In some ways, it gives you a handicap because you've learned systems which are no longer going to be useful going forward. You're going to have to relearn. And being somebody earlier in your career, you have the opportunity to learn the new way and start there. So all the AI things we're talking about, having an AI SDLC, the pen testing that goes along with it, the AI, built-in testing before and after. If you can learn these skills, they're highly in demand right now. Every company, every software company out there is clamoring for these kinds of people. There's just not that many people out there who have those many skills in that area yet because it's new. I mean, I have 15 years of experience in Gen AI, but unlike a lot of other people out there, being facetious, been around for 3 years, but there's only so much experience you can have in these new areas. So if you can really dig into them and you can really force yourself to learn them end to end really well, then that will be something that draws an employer to you because ultimately it's passion that drives people. So if you can show passion, you can show the passion for this new technology, somebody out there will catch that and you'll find yourself with a job before you know it.
Thank you so much.
One thing that I think is really valuable is run and operate your own lab. Be hands-on with this stuff. Gary Hayslip, a good friend of mine, emphasizes this when he does a lot of mentoring and coaching for people coming into the profession. The differentiator from his perspective are those folks that have got labs in their home and are running lots and lots of different tools. That hands-on experience is invaluable.
Yes, there are questions in the chat. So we want to, I see 3 questions in the chat, and Tim Smith rightfully has also posted, there's an ISACA email that you can send the questions to. But here I go. Are there AI tools that you are seeing help with the patching process? So specific to that.
Go ahead. I'll let you take that one, Ashish.
Yeah, there are enterprise tools like Tanium that have implemented AI in their platform to assist with surfacing up systems that need to be patched, so you don't have to hunt for them.
Yeah, and to build on that, there's lots of tools out there that are automated. I don't want to name specific ones because the ones I know are the ones my company uses, but there's lots of open source tools out there. If you search for them, there's actually lots of really nifty tools that are adding to really massive stacks to where they'll automatically patch systems on both the enterprise side as well as the workstation side. So there's lots of things being built very fast right now, and it's making it a challenge in some ways because AI is making it easy to build, and it's not making it as easy to figure out whether or not the things are good. But you have to continuously research for those types of open source tools because they also depreciate fast. But I'd recommend searching for those things. Maybe ask Claude. Claude is good at finding those things. It'll go search GitHub for you, and you can find some pretty nifty tools taking that approach.
All right. The second question, what AI-focused resources, information, training is part of the vCISO program?
Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
What AI-focused resources, information, and training is part of the vCISO program?
It really starts with the foundational, what we call situational awareness. So it really begins with understanding the environment and what partially understanding what the business objective is and what is in the environment from there. And then you can take that and then work towards how a lot of what everybody's talking about in awareness of how we can leverage AI to make an environment more resilient. It is driven from a vendor agnostic perspective. So we will look at open source tools as well as commercial ones, and really just there's a heavy focus on being able to think understanding what is the environment, what is the challenge, and what are the tools that are out there, and how would you go about approaching it through a very peer-driven methodology.
And I want to piggyback on that one real quick to say that the next workshop we're doing at ISACA San Diego will actually be going over the AI SDLC and how to build secure products using it.
Yeah.
Effectively, how do you prepare for that post-Mythos world? And then we're looking to do that in like September or so, and it'll be a 3 to 4 hour workshop.
Can we take another question?
Yeah, sure.
So Audrey Milani, and this is an interesting one. She's a journalism student covering today's event. Would anyone be willing to answer a quick question about your biggest takeaway from the discussion of AI and cybersecurity? Biggest takeaway from the discussion on AI and cybersecurity? That's a question.
Would anybody in the group like to answer that? Yeah.
So use AI to fight AI.
And there's a couple of things that frankly scare the crap out of me. The timescale issues, I think, are one of the huge takeaways right now. We do not have the luxury of time anymore. The time that it takes to get up and go grab a cup of coffee, your environment can be exploited with some of the techniques that we're seeing. And it's not just things that are common weaknesses and exposure being disclosed. It's stuff that's being put out onto GitHub. And within minutes, it's being noted and weaponized in relatively short order. So attacks are taking place where things are exploitable within 8 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours. Part of that is effectively one of the other takeaways is all knowledge is knowledgeable or is knowable. And so right now what we're seeing is any exploit, no matter how theoretical, ultimately will end up being exploitable. And we saw this with some of the extraordinarily like multi-step attacks against BSD that ultimately got to the kernel. So there's a lot there that I think we'll have to unpack. But the world is new. And I think delve into it. Start training up as fast as you can on everything, Claude, Daybreak, et al. So.
Yeah, and my quick one to add to that is you have to stay agile and you have to stay up to date. And you have to be willing to change on the fly. And that's something that a lot of companies struggle with. And it's a new world. If you don't have that ability, you get left behind immediately. I mean, people are talking about Mythos. Fable came out, which is effectively Mythos already. But honestly, Opus, some of these older models, they're already there. And if you're not ready to, make change to what you have, then you're already behind. And the thing is we don't know what's going to happen 6 months from now. And it could be worse than all this. Like maybe quantum gets solved because of AI. Who knows? And then all of a sudden, all encryption is no longer valid. You have to be prepared to be flexible and to change fast. Because if you don't, then you're immediately left behind.
Yeah, and that would go back to the CISO course of we really foundationally want to help teach people how to apply critical thinking to everything that we're talking about here, because it's always going to be a unique scenario for that particular organization. And like to Alex's point, how if we were to do this panel again in November, we'd probably it would be a different dynamic.
Do we have any more questions? Need a mic.
Yeah. My name is Mike. I should have remembered that. So one thing that I'm hearing a lot about is repatriation from the cloud, because how much more your attack surface gets opened up when you're multi-cloud on-prem. Pair that with, people's cloud bills are soaring through the roof these days. Are you guys hearing anything about moving workloads back on-prem for both those two reasons? Kind of, and now it makes sense to move back on-prem?
I think you're just always going to have that dynamic. In general, I think the statistic in 2019, 50% of all data was in the cloud. Today, it's 90%. But you're always going to have people going back and forth. I mean, there's and for different reasons. But I personally would think the cloud security is far superior than on-premise security any day of the week, just because you've got a set of professionals called the Azure team or the AWS team, not Joe you hired down the street or whatever to take care of your data center or whatever. So it's really the monitoring in the cloud is always going to be better. I mean, there's many techniques to sandbox off what you're doing in the cloud to make it, if you've got concerns about that. But for me, it always just comes back to fundamental security basics. If you're doing them, the cloud can be very secure. But I don't see security as a reason people going back to on-premise. I see it more like, especially with like online data models, LLMs, which are just way cheaper to use on-premise in some cases. So I think you're just always going to have that flow back and forth. But I mean, the facts are the facts. Over the last 15 years, you went from 0 data being in the cloud to 90% of it being in the cloud. So I mean,
well, any last questions before we close it? I'll go ahead and steal a mic from someone. There we go.
I have a question for Chad. You at the very beginning stated how you guys are implementing zero trust and you guys are scraping all the PIIs from your documents before sending them into Claude. But I also know that Claude has good capabilities of correlating and also has a history of regurgitating information. And I think that is some kind of data loss that is happening. Is that something you guys are taking into account? Is that something?
We don't put PII into Claude. If I said that, that's my
without PII. Say you took away the name, you took away all the details, but the story that say this patient has had this issue is still there. And say they have a very critical or very rare case of disease, and that information is coming out to some other user in terms of, say, a story or something else. I think because their case is so rare, it's like an outlier, but it's definitely a possibility.
I could see that be the case. Well, somebody has not configured Claude correctly for your organization, because if you configure Claude with the DSPM built in, that data is not going anywhere. Right. And also because Claude is a trained model, it's not taking any new information and training itself on the fly. So it's not going to, that can happen in a shared session. So your data is only as good as the session context that you're using it within. But so say like you and I are collaborating on something and I share my project with you, my Claude project. And in my session, I've uploaded a document that contains this information. Sure, you could go in because we're sharing that session and it could be regurgitated back to you in another conversation. That's something that has not been fixed in DSPM that I've seen, but it doesn't mean that you can share that with somebody outside the organization. That doesn't mean like you're going to go home and all of a sudden it's going to regurgitate some user of Claude somewhere else. It's going to be like, they're talking about this rare case of cancer all of a sudden. That's really not, the way these are designed is to contain the data within the session, within the organization. We've got Claude configured that if somebody tries to upload PII, it'll immediately alert the manager. So what are you doing? Yeah, so you've got techniques, but it's not going to go anywhere unless you're using just Claude AI, the open version of it, on mistake. But I mean, I see this happen all the time. One person's got their personal Claude open, then they've got their corporate Claude open, and they're just going back and forth, and they don't even realize which one they're using. Especially in Claude Code, if anybody's used it, you think you're using one account, but you're actually using another account, and which makes it really dangerous. So I get the point. There are
the human mistake can actually lead to that.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. There is that danger there. So no doubt. But secondly, the session is shut down. It's not going to be. It's not like a grandmother in Seattle is going to be all of a sudden seeing cancer information. It just doesn't work that way. But
thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah, and to add on that, Claude has a feature called zero data retention, and it's a tool like any other. If you're not paying for Claude, you are the service. Your data is the service. So if you're using the free version, your data will get out there, whether it's Claude, GPT, Gemini, that cool little tool online that answers your questions. If you're not paying for it, you are probably the service. So keep that in mind when you're using these. But if you engineer and architect it properly, then you can make sure the data is never retained. It just disappears after it's been processed. Any last questions? Yeah, if you're not the customer, you're the commodity. So with that, I guess I'll close the panel. One last thing I do want to say is that if you want to reach out to any of us, all of us are board members of ISACA San Diego. You can reach out to ISACA San Diego at info@isaca-sd.org, or you can reach out to any of us individually on LinkedIn. Always glad to talk about, say, AI SDLC and how to build security into it. Any last words that you guys had before we closed it?
Just to let everybody know that next month's meeting for here is online and available for registration. And the gentleman will be talking about operational technology security. So anybody that's interested in that here or online, love to have you back. We're just trying to kind of broaden the scope of what we can share with people.
Thank you for your time, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.